Hey everyone, welcome to the new session to talk about top 10 trends in cloud native computing. Let's get started. Cloud native is a community founded by Cloud Native Computing Foundation in 2015. It brings together top developers and end users and vendors all together to talk about open source, vendor neutral technology. It's part of the non-profit organization, Linux Foundation. You might have heard about it. If you haven't, you can go and check their website. CNCF is, though it's been only 5 years, it's driving adoption of cloud native technology, and there are more than 150 organizations which is now using cloud native technology. So that speaks volume about how the cloud native technology is being used across the industry. And this has been referenced from CNCF website. They have different members and supporting the cause, and they have platinum members, gold members, and nonprofit members. As you can see all the big logos here, whether it's Oracle, AWS, Google. So they're all supporting the cause because cloud native is the future, and the adoption of cloud native is increasing in the last few years. And it's the talk of the town in most of the conferences and most of the developer forums. So what exactly, before we deep dive into the top 10 trends, let's look at what the cloud native is being defined as by CNCF. And this is the version 1.0, where if you look at it, there are some keywords which you need to catch in this definition. One is you are building something which is a scalable, modern, dynamic solution. And a lot of times people think cloud is equivalent to cloud native. Cloud is only providing you the managed services, infrastructure, and the backbone. But cloud native technology doesn't mean it's limited to that only. It's including public cloud, private cloud. You can deploy on-prem or the hybrid cloud. You can use the combination of that. And the technologies related to containers, service mesh, microservices, all these are part of now cloud native landscape, right? So the intent is to define loosely coupled systems, automated systems, and Cloud Native Computing Foundation has been playing an extraordinary role in driving the adoption of the cloud native technology and creating an ecosystem which is fostered by the open source and vendor neutral kind of technologies. So that you are not locked into one vendor. So now that we understand the definition of cloud native, let's look at what's trending in the cloud native world. And in today's session, like I said, that we're going to talk about top 10 trends, and most of these have been talked about in KubeCon, which happened recently, and this is being talked by multiple other developer forums as well. So the first thing which we need to observe is the growth of the cloud native community itself. Since 2015, the community is thriving. In last 1 or 2 years, you can see that since 2019, the number of projects which are becoming part of cloud native has increased to 145 or 144. Their number of contributors are also kind of increasing exponentially, almost by 50%. That clearly indicates how people from all the different companies and vendors are interested in becoming part of the cloud native community. And that also increases the adoption of the technology. And that's why the end user community, you can see it's thriving. Like 145 plus organizations are already declaring that we are using cloud native technology. So the first trend is you can see clearly that the growth of cloud native community is being exponential. The second thing, which cloud native as the Linux Foundation is laid the backbone of cloud native computing foundation. We have been celebrating 30 years of Linux. It's one of the most widely used operating system, right? So Linux turning 30 years, cloud native communities all behind supporting the life cycle around Linux systems, and all the cloud native technology that wouldn't have been possible without Linux. So the second trend which I want to acknowledge, which also in the cloud native community is being acknowledged, the influence of Linux over the Kubernetes, over so many other open source and cloud native technologies. So influence of Linux is the second biggest trend. Everybody is acknowledging, it's growing, and the adoption is also going. The third thing, which is the establishment of the cloud native maturity model by CNCF. They adopted a maturity model from the industry, and in a way, they have categorized into sandbox, incubating, and graduated. When you submit your project, and they have a governing council behind it, and maturity model is not only about technology, it's about people, it's about process, it's about policy. So once the project is submitted as a sandbox, where you see, it's a promising solution or promising technology, then you see some early adopters, you see that the technology is getting momentum, then it goes to incubating phase, and then incubating, you see the more adoption, early majority is kind of adopting the technology, and then it finally moves to the graduation, where the technology is in graduated stage, right? So there is a community behind this. It's not being worked upon in silo. It's well supported by. So third big trend is the community maturity model itself, which is being popular by CNCF. So if you look at the catalog of Sandbox projects, which is part of the CNCF website, you can go and refer it. You can see more than 30 to 40 different projects which are already in Sandbox, and very popular projects. You can see some logos here, K3S, which is for IoT Kubernetes. You can see Porter, you can see many different logos which are kind of getting and thriving in cloud native community. The second is the projects which are more mature, where they are graduated or incubating. And you can see again the big logos here, like Helm for Kubernetes, Fluentd, Kubernetes itself. So many different initiatives are now part of this whole cloud native computing umbrella, right? So this provides you a bigger holistic picture of what the cloud native technology landscape is. You can go to the CNCF website and explore all these different projects and read about it, how they contribute to the overall cloud native technology ecosystem. So the fourth area is about the cloud native end user community, and the end user community is driving this technology radar, which talks about how cloud native technology is being adopted, right? So again, it has three different phases. One is the adopt phase, where technology is in mainstream, it's being adopted by different companies. The trial and cloud native community strongly recommends that technology set. Trial is where it seems promising and you are still evaluating, but it seems promising, great future. If you want to use it, you can go ahead and use it. Assess is more about, it's being assisted by the community, and they're learning and they are sharing. And if you have a specific need for technology, that particular technology, you can use that technology as well. So they bucket it into these three different areas, and there are examples, and there are many examples which you can find on their website, radar.cncf.io. The two recent ones which I have quoted here is the DevSecOps technology radar and the multi-cluster management for Kubernetes. As you can see in the DevOps, in adopt section, you can see SonarQube, Artifactory, Terraform, Argo CD, all the big technology which are being in focus in nowadays, right? And in the trial and assess mode, you can see all the upcoming players which are being assessed in the cloud native community. Same goes with multi-cluster management as well. You can see that public cloud Kubernetes and private cloud Kubernetes is pretty popular. It's being used, so that's why it's in adopt phase. So the fourth takeaway is how you can use the cloud native end user technology radar. The fifth part, which is the fifth trend, which is emerging as part of the cloud native community, is the security. And security is of prime focus because, as you can know, in the cloud, security is always important when you're adopting a cloud or a cloud native technology. So they kind of fostered this community called OpenSSF, which is focused on security principles, and it's a collaborative community. It brings together more of initiatives and best practices, what you need to do in cloud native to ensure that the cloud native technologies are secure and being used in the organization, right? So there are many different initiatives and projects which are going under the umbrella of OpenSSF, and you can go and read it about the website of the OpenSSF as well. So security, the key takeaway, it's still the key focus of the cloud native technology. I'll share a couple of examples here. One tool which I found very useful is the scorecard, which gives you the scorecard of all the dependencies, all the open source libraries and projects we are using, right? So if the it kind of buckets into high critical, low, medium kind of security vulnerability, and it rates the score. So you get a scorecard, and this is just the output which you see on the left side. Which you see on the right side is what is the artifact and what is the scorecard of that one. So it's pretty useful. It's available open source as the community is offering you. The second tool, which as part of this, which got mentioned in KubeCon as well, is Allstar. And it's a GitHub app which continuously enforces the security using the best practices, which is enforced there. And it uses a bot which can read, and you can create your own kind of rules to be followed, and it gives you a summary of automated report, right? That what are the security vulnerabilities in your project. So feel free to use these tools or principles by referring to the OpenSSF website. So the key part is that security is the key focus area of the cloud native community. Sixth part, you can't go away without mentioning Kubernetes. Kubernetes remains the key focus area. There is a whole ecosystem around it. It's in pretty much in mainstream. You have seen the tremendous amount of support, and it's gaining from many different cloud vendors, many different Kubernetes platforms, right? You must have heard about Rancher, OpenShift, Platform 9, Docker Enterprise. These are all key vendors providing Kubernetes management platform. And that started growing into 3 different trends, where you see that there is a multi-cluster management approach which is being talked about. There is the new set of APIs like gateway APIs, which is being built around the Kubernetes ecosystem, and the uses of the common tools to do that, right? Flux, Kustomize, Helm, all these are enabling Kubernetes ecosystem. And as you can see on the right is that the growth of Kubernetes is exponential, right? This is being consistently going, and very soon in next 5 years, Kubernetes will be the new Linux. That's what industry is saying about that, its adoption. You don't need to sell Kubernetes anymore. It will be a de facto standard. So Kubernetes remains the prime focus area, and the ecosystem around it remains the prime focus area for cloud native community. Some of the key things, and that's the 7th trend, which we all see is as part of the cloud native community, is that the constant project updates and key announcements, right? So in the KubeCon also, it was announced as the key incubators, which you see on the right side, like Flux, Crossplay, and Keda. All these are kind of the key incubators which got mentioned in KubeCon. And there are 24 projects which got moved from Sandbox to Incubating stage in recent times. That speaks volume of how the community is engaging, constantly evaluating, and the tech council is looking at all those and providing the oversight, right? So some of the key project updates, I just want to mention that you must have heard about Istio, but Linkerd is kind of gaining their popularity as a service mesh. It's recently got graduated. Projects like APIs, Clarity, which is to enforce the API security visibility tool, it's kind of getting a lot of traction and got mentioned in the KubeCon. KubeSTR got also mentioned, and so that speaks to how the project updates are more frequent, announcements are example of how the community is thriving, and how the projects around the cloud native community is getting the right amount of support from the community, and it's getting the right amount of the talent also getting attracted to ensure that you put that talent into the right area of supporting the cloud native community. So that's the seventh trend. The eighth one is it's more about related to our previous talks, right? That about how do you enable learning, right? So cloud native community is not only about offering the technology. Any technology needs to adopt that technology. You need a constant learning, and you need to foster the culture where people are learning about that technology. So the key focus area of the community itself is how to enable people, and certification is one way of doing that, and nobody is challenging that, but there are so many offerings, free videos and courses and the material which is you can find on the website, as well as the cloud native community, Linux Foundation and all that. You can see how they are creating that environment where you can learn, you can share the knowledge, and also prove the knowledge by doing the certification. Recently, they launched Kubernetes and Cloud Native Associate Certification. And then there are companies like Aston, which is providing the Kubernetes training for free. And there are many, like the cloud native technologies is huge, right? So there are companies which are thriving because they are supporting the whole ecosystem by enable the learning. So the eighth focus area and the emerging trend is how do you enable the learning within the cloud native and outside the cloud native community. The ninth trend is about supporting the holistic developer experience. So we talk about a different business value, we talk about technology complexity, and we talk about different things, but eventually to create that business value, you need developers who can understand what they're trying to do, and who you can reduce the friction which they get in their day-to-day job. So the cloud native community is all about creating that experience for them, so that the idea to code to production is easier. And suppose you are running something on your local machine, you should have no complex process to take it to production. So how you can simplify, and they have written multiple and kind of enable different technology, and you can still refer to the CNCF website. So I just want to extract one thing is you talk about SRE, platform, observability, Kubernetes and deployment, CI/CD and all. It's all about creating holistic developer experience so that the developers can easily use these CI/CD practices, deployment control tools and all to deploy from their local machine to the production in a seamless way. And technologies like Kubernetes Service Mesh are also taking the burden off the developer so that they don't need to worry about security, throttling, all those things, so that these technology provide that support to the developer. So the community itself is focused on making that life easier for a developer. And you can see all those tools and ecosystem around that. So that's the ninth part, right? So, and the last and not the least most important part is the conversion of machine learning, right? Nobody can go in this world without talking about machine learning and AI. And cloud native community is also doing the same. They have many projects which are supporting the machine learning ecosystem and AI ecosystem. I just want to mention one which got also mentioned in many forums in KubeCon and others is the Kubeflow. Kubeflow is going to provide the same thing which you have seen in the application side of the world, that you can do the job management, monitoring, the data modeling and visualization, everything end to end using the Kubeflow. So it makes the life easier for machine learning scientists and developers. So, and it's backed up by Kubernetes, and that's the cool thing about it, is that Kubernetes is providing that backbone. So, and there are different tools and technologies evolving around that. So that's the important part. So this is just the high level overview of a typical machine learning platform. But the key takeaway is that the conversion of the machine learning and the cloud native technology, which is extraordinary, and it's going to thrive in next few years, right? So so cloud native community is behind that. Having said that, we almost covered the 10 top trends, which is kind of happening around the cloud native. And I would like to thank KubeCon and Cloud Native Computing Foundation, the Linux Foundation, to enable me to talk about this and share this knowledge with this community and you guys, right? So thank you very much. You can read more about different software architecture and different articles and blogs on vedcraft.com, and happy to engage with you on Twitter or any other channel. Thank you so much.